Hello students, in this video now we are going to learn about the principles involved in the qualitative analysis. Qualitative analysis. Here qualitative analysis means identification of the nature of the given species. In the quantitative analysis we find out the amount of the substance, whether the amount may be the weight or amount may be the value. That means we may find the amount of the substance in terms of the volume or in terms of the weight. But whereas in the qualitative analysis we find the nature of the matter or the substance. And again in our degree practicals we go for the semi micro analysis. Here qualitative analysis is classified into the different categories depending on the amount of the substance used for the qualitative analysis. So here we have the table and the amount of the substances. Look here, first one is the ordinary or the macro analysis. So in the ordinary or in the macro analysis, the amount of the substance used lies in between the 0.1 to 1 gram. Otherwise we may take the 10 ml of the solution. And if we use the 0.01 to the 0.1 grams, then we call it as the semi micro analysis. Generally we go for the semi micro analysis in degree practicals, and we call it as the micro analysis whenever we use the 10 to 100 milligrams, only 10 to 100 milligrams of the substance. And we call it as the ultra micro analysis if we use the 0.001 to the 0.01 grams of the substance. So in our degree lab we go for the semi micro analysis. That means in our degree lab we use the 0.01 to the 0.1 gram of the substance or 1 ml of the solution for the analysis. So that such type of analysis is called as the semi micro analysis. In a semi micro analysis, here first of all we go for the identification and confirmation of the anions. Then after we go for the identification and confirmation of the cations. But prior to that one we have to know the two principles or two laws that are used or involved in the qualitative analysis. First one of them is the solubility product. A solubility product is defined as the product of the ion concentration in a saturated solution of a soluble electrolyte at a constant temperature. I read one second. The solubility product is the product of the ionic concentrations in a saturated solution of a soluble electrolyte at a constant temperature is a constant, and that constant quantity here is called as the solubility product. So this definition can be understood by taking an example. Here we take the example of the silver nitrate. Yes, look here my dears. Here, silver chloride. Silver chloride is a slightly sparingly soluble solid. So whenever we add the silver chloride to the water, only a small amount of the silver chloride dissolves in the water, and only certain portion of that dissolved salt goes into the solution in the form of the silver and chloride ions. So it always forms a saturated solution. So a equilibrium exists. Always a equilibrium exists between ions present in the saturated solution and the solid present in the solution. So this is insoluble solid. This is the Ag silver chloride present in the solution, and these are the ions. So such type of equilibrium exists in the sparingly soluble salts. In case of this, sparingly soluble salt. If given salt is a strong electrolyte, then it completely dissolves and we don't find any equilibrium. For example, in case of NaCl, we don't find such equilibrium. And where equilibrium lies, we get the constant known as the equilibrium constant. And equilibrium constant is defined as the ratio of the product of concentration of the products to the product of concentration of the reactant. So we define the equilibrium constant like this. It is the ratio of the product of concentration of the products, ratio of the product of concentration of the products to the product of concentration of the reactants. So like that we define the equilibrium constants. Here the products are silver ion and chloride ions. So here we have to take the silver ion concentration and chloride ion concentration, and here reactant is what is that, this silver chloride dissolved in the solution. So here we take the concentration of AgCl aqueous solution. Okay na? So like that we write the equilibrium constant for this equilibrium. And at a constant temperature, the solubility of the silver chloride, sparingly soluble salt, is always a constant. So we bring the two constant. This is one constant and this is another constant. So we bring the two constant to the one side. As a result, we get another constant. That another constant here is called as the Ks. Ks, that is a solubility product. Ks is known as the solubility product. So solubility product means the product of the ions of a saturated solution at a constant temperature. It is a product of the concentration of the ions, product of the concentration of the ions of a saturated solution at a constant temperature. Here is called as the solubility product, and it depends on the temperature. As the temperature changes, solubility product also changes. Then we go for the another phenomenon known as the common ion effect. So common ion effect is defined as the decrease in the ionization of a weak electrolyte caused by the addition of a strong electrolyte having an ion common with weak electrolyte is defined as a common ion effect. So definition can be easily understood by taking here some examples. So we go for the first example. Here we know very well that ammonium hydroxide is a weak electrolyte. So in case of weak electrolyte, always an equilibrium exists like this. Here actually we should not write equilibrium symbol, because ammonium chloride is a salt and it completely dissociates to give the ammonium ions and the chloride ions. So in ammonium hydroxide and in the ammonium chloride, the common ion is ammonium ion. Ammonium hydroxide is a weak electrolyte. This is a weak electrolyte, and to that we are adding to that ammonium chloride hydroxide we are adding ammonium chloride. Ammonium ion is the common ion to both these substances. So as a result, whenever we add the ammonium chloride to the ammonium hydroxide solution, the concentration of the ammonium ions increase. So when the concentration of the products increases, then the equilibrium shifts to the reactant side according to the Le Chatelet principle. So when the concentration of the products increase, then the equilibrium moves towards to the reactant side. That means backward reaction takes place. As a result, the solubility of the ammonium hydroxide decreases. So such type of phenomenon is known as the common ion effect. So once again we go for the definition for the common ion effect, that Here the decrease in the solubility of an weak electrolyte due to the addition of an electrolyte which has a common ion with that weak electrolyte is known as the common ion effect. So due to the common ion effect, solubility of the weak electrolytes decrease. The solubility of the weak electrolytes decrease due to the common ion effect. So here before going to the anions, we have to remember one point, that the solubility product means nothing but ionic product only. Here solubility product is the ionic product of the saturated solution. Solubility product is the ionic product of the saturated solution. Okay, that point we have to remember. And when the ionic product increases than the solubility product, then the substance precipitates and we get the precipitate. And when the ionic product is less than the solubility product, then the salt or the substance is present in the dissolved state and we don't get the precipitate. So here we make use of both these phenomenon, solubility product and the common ion effect, during the quantitative analysis, and we make use of these two principles or phenomena. Okay, then we go for the another example for the common ion effect, that is the solubility of the acetic acid. Here when acetic acid ionizes, we get the acetate ion and what is that, H plus ion, acetate ions and H plus ions, protons. In the similar way, when sodium acetate dissociates, it gives us the acetate ion and sodium ions. So in both these cases, acetate ion is the common ion. So when sodium acetate is added to the acetic acid, the solubility or the solubility product of the acetic acid decreases. So this is another example for the common ion effect. And we move on to the next example for the common ion effect, that is the H2S solubility. Here when H2S decomposes, we get the protons as well as the sulfide ions. And HCl is a strong electrolyte. This is a weak electrolyte and this is a strong electrolyte. We are adding a strong electrolyte HCl to the weak electrolyte H2S. And H plus ion, that means protons are common in these two electrolytes. As a result, the concentration of the H plus ions increase and the solubility of the H2S decreases. That point we have to remember here. And look here. Yes. Next here, before going to the quantitative analysis, we have to make the salt mixture into the water extract or into the sodium extract. So in order to prepare the water extract, what we have to do means we have to take the 50 milligrams of salt mixture and we have to add the 2 ml of the distilled water. So we get the aqueous solution. Then after we have to add the sodium carbonate saturated solution. So here after adding the sodium carbonate saturated solution, we may get precipitate or we may not get precipitate. If we don't get any precipitate, then we have to label that aqueous solution as the water extract, and we have to use that water extract for the quantitative analysis of the anions. In that quantitative analysis, we find the anions. And if you get the precipitate, then we have to prepare the sodium carbonate extraction for the analysis of the anions. So if you get the precipitate, then we can't use that salt mixture directly for the qualitative analysis of the anions. So we have to move on to the sodium extract preparation. So sodium extract can be prepared by mixing 100 milligrams of the given mixture to the 200 milligrams of sodium carbonate and adding the 10 ml of distilled water. So we have to take double amount of the sodium carbonate to that of the given mixture, and we have to add the sufficient amount of the water, and we have to boil it for the 2 minutes. After that we have to centrifugate that one. Then at the bottom of the centrifuge test tube we get the precipitate, which is known as the residue, and we get, at the top we get the clear solution. That clear solution here is called as the filtrate, and we have to use that filtrate. We have to label that filtrate as the sodium extract, and we have to use it for the analysis of the anions. Okay. So before going for the qualitative analysis of the anions, so the sodium carbonate should be acidified with the 2 or 3 drops of the dilute acid, and the carbonate ion should be removed in the form of the CO2. So here the selection of the acid, dilute acid, depends on the test or the anions for which we are going to do the qualitative analysis. So this is the principle involved in the preparation of the sodium extract. So look here, actually what is it? Here if you use the barium chloride directly for the analysis of the chloride ions, here look here, when barium chloride is treated with the sodium carbonate, we get a precipitate barium carbonate, and chloride ions go into the solution and in the form of the sodium chloride. Okay, na? That is one example. And look here, calcium phosphate, another example. In another example, calcium phosphate, actually here I have written something wrong here. Look here, in the place of the barium chloride, actually we will write the barium sulfate, because barium chloride is highly soluble in water, there is no doubt. So if it is a barium sulfate, then that barium sulfate is not soluble in water. In that case we prepare the sodium extract. So here barium sulfate is added, that means any insoluble salt is taken, and to that one sodium carbonate is added and heated. So then what happens here, double decomposition reaction takes place, and with the anions form the sodium salt. For example, if it is the sulfate ion, then we get the sodium sulfate, and if it is the phosphate ion, we get the sodium phosphate ions. And here what is the purpose of preparing sodium extract means, here we convert heavy metal salts into the sodium salts, and we have to remember that all sodium salts are soluble in water. So as a result, what happens, the anions go into the aqueous solution in the form of the sodium salts. As a result, we can easily use them for the identification tests. So here heavy metal salts which are insoluble in water are converted into the sodium salts which are soluble in water. That is the main purpose of preparing the sodium extract. So by using the sodium extract we can identify the anions. So whenever we go for the test to identify the nitrite and sulfide ions, we have to treat the sodium extract with the acetic acid. We have to treat the sodium extract with the sodium carbonate extract with the acetic acid. So whenever we go for the identification tests of the chloride, bromide and iodides, we have to treat the sodium carbonate extract with the dilute HNO3. And whenever we move for the identification of the phosphate ions, we have to treat the sodium carbonate extract with the concentrated HNO3. In the similar way, For the sulfate ions, we have to treat with the HCl, dilute HCl. So these are very important, we have to remember. Okay na? Otherwise we get the wrong information, and we may fail in the qualitative analysis. Now look here, the anions are classified into three categories here. First one is the volatile groups anion, volatile group. In that volatile group, we use the dilute H2SO4 as the reagent. And in the volatile group, carbonate, bicarbonate, sulfide, SO3 minus to sulfite, this is sulfide, thiosulfate, nitrite ions are included. I read once again: carbonate, bicarbonate, sulfide, sulfite, thiosulfate, and nitrite. And second category is the concentrated H2SO4 group. In this group, chloride, bromide, and iodide, the halide, that means halide ions, and nitrate and acetate ions are included. Acetate, nitrate, chloride, bromide, and iodide. Here, so the salts to which contain these halides, nitrates, and acetates, upon addition of dilute H2SO4, we don't get any volatile compound. So for that purpose, we would add the concentrated H2SO4. So in that case, we may get the volatile products which are helpful in identifying the anions. So that's why it is a non-volatile group, and here we use the concentrated H2SO4. And third group is the independent group. So in independent group, there is no particular reagent for this one, and each anion has its own identification and confirmation test. Under independent group, sulfate, borate, and phosphate ions are included. Phosphate ion formula is BO4 minus 3. Borate ion formula is BO3 minus 3. Sulfate ion formula is SO4 minus 2. So these points we have to remember. Now we go for the individual ions, identification and confirmation of the individual ions. First of all, we go for the identification of the carbonates ion. So if a given salt mixture contain carbonates, we have to add the dilute H2SO4. If the given salt mixture contain carbonates ion, then in that after addition of the dilute H2SO4, we get a colorless, odorless gas with hissing sound. That is the main point we have to remember: hissing sound. We experience this hissing sound whenever we open the cool drinks bottle. Okay, na? The same hissing sound we get there also. So that is the main point in the we have to remember in the identification of the carbon dioxide gas. Next, we go for the confirmation of the carbonate ion. So to the released gas, if we expose a glass rod dipped in the lime water means nothing but calcium hydroxide. Dilute a clear solution of calcium hydroxide is known as the lime water. Clear solution of calcium hydroxide is known as the lime water. So when the glass rod dipped in the lime water is exposed to the carbon dioxide gas, which is released due to the addition of H2SO4, then we observe a white coating, white precipitate on the glass rod. So that confirms the presence of the carbonate ion in the given salt mixture. We experience this reaction during the whitewashing. So whenever we whitewash the walls, after some time we get a dazzling appearance on the walls. That is due to the formation of the calcium carbonate. So the lime water that is coated on the walls reacts with the carbon dioxide present in the atmosphere and forms a white precipitate which has the color, dazzling appearance. Next, we go for the identification of the chloride ions. So, if the salt, if concentrated H2SO4 is added to the salt mixture and we get a colorless pungent smell gas, then we have to suspect that the salt mixture contains the chloride ions. Then we go for the confirmation of the chloride ions. So the presence of the chloride ions can be confirmed by addition of the silver nitrate solution to the salt mixture solution. If chloride ions are present, then we get the white precipitate, silver chloride white precipitate. To that white precipitate, we have to add the ammonia solution. Then that white precipitate dissolves. So this is the confirmation test for this chloride ions. One more test is there for the chloride ion confirmation, that is the manganese dioxide test. Here what we have to do means we have to take the salt mixture, we have to add a pinch of manganese dioxide and we have to add the concentrated H2SO4. Here we get like pale green color pungent smell gas, that is nothing but chlorine gas, that confirms. So this is the confirmation test for the chloride ion. And one more test is there, that is the chromyl chloride test. So in this test what we do means we take the salt mixture containing the chloride ion and we add the potassium dichromate and H2SO4. To the salt mixture we have to add the potassium dichromate and concentrated H2SO4. We get the orange color or yellow color pungent smell gas. Okay, na? That pungent smell yellow color or orange color gas is nothing but chromyl chloride. Formula of the chromyl chloride is CrO2Cl2. And if this chromyl chloride gas is passed into the water, we get the chromic acid H2CrO4. So if we dip a lead acid paper into this one, then we get a yellow color precipitate. So otherwise we may add the lead acid solution, then we get the yellow color precipitate, that is known as the lead chromate. That yellow color precipitate is nothing but lead chromate. So this is another confirmation test for the chloride ion. The confirmation test for the chloride ions are three. First one is the silver nitrate test, second one is the manganese dioxide test, third one is the chromyl chloride test. So the identification of the bromide ions is very much similar to the identification of the chloride ion. So if a reddish brown color gas is released when concentrated H2SO4 is added to the salt mixture, then we have to suspect the presence of the bromide ion, and that reddish brown color pungent smell gas is nothing but bromine. We get bromine whenever bromide ion is present in the salt mixture. Then we have to go for the confirmation tests. The confirmation tests are very much similar to the confirmation of the chloride ion. Here also we use the silver nitrate, but here we get the pale white precipitate, light color white PPT. But whereas the silver chloride is pure white, here we get the light white color precipitate. And this light white color precipitate is silver bromide, and it does not dissolve completely in the ammonia solution. Whereas the silver chloride completely dissolves and we get a clear solution. Here we don't get clear solution, that silver bromide does not dissolve completely. And manganese, we may use the manganese dioxide test for the identification of the bromide ion, confirmation of the bromide ion. Same thing we have to do here also. We have to the salt mixture, we have to add the manganese dioxide and we have to add the 2 or 3 drops of the concentrated H2SO4. Here bromide is oxidized with manganese dioxide. Manganese dioxide is a good oxidizing agent. I have already told in the earlier class, in the previous classes, that any substance that contains oxygen acts as an oxidizing agent. So here manganese dioxide acts as oxidizing agent and it oxidizes bromide ion. It oxidizes the what is that bromide ion into the bromine. Bromine. Bromide ions. Br minus ions to the bromine. So that point we would remember. And bromine is a reddish brown color gas and with a pungent smell. It has a very bad smell. Actually, bromus means bad smell. Bromus itself indicates that it has the bad smell. Next, we go for identification of the acetate ions. So then concentrated H2SO4 is added to the salt mixture. If we get the vinegar smell, we have to suspect the presence of the acetate ions. You know very well that vinegar is used in making of the gobi manchuria. Okay, na? So here vinegar is a clear solution. So here if we get the vinegar smell due to the addition of concentrated H2SO4, we have to think that the salt mixture contain acetate ions in it. So presence of the acetate ions is confirmed by the ester test and the ferrichloride test. In the ester test, what we have to do means to the salt mixture solution we add the H2SO4 or HCl. Sorry, we have to add H2SO4 only, and we have to add the ethyl alcohol, and we have to heat for some time. Here we get a fruity smell. That fruity smell is nothing but due to the ester only. Esters has good smell. Esters have good smell, that we know very well. Esters have very good smell. So here lower esters have the fruity smell. Generally, the vegetable we use the vegetable oils. No, those vegetable oils have very good smell because vegetable oils are nothing but esters only. Vegetable oils are nothing but esters. So here also we get the fruity smell that indicates the presence of the acetate ions. One more test is there, that is the ferrichloride test. So if neutral ferrichloride is added to the salt mixture solution, then we get a red color solution. That neutral ferrichloride solution changes into the red color solution due to the addition of the salt solution or sodium extract or water extract. Next we go for the identification of the nitrate ion. Nitrate ions are identified by using the diphenylamine test. Here what we have to do means we have to take the 2 or 3 drops of sodium extract and we have to add the 2 drops of diphenylamine indicator. That's it. Here we get a day blue color solution. So that indicates the presence of the nitrate ion. Then we go for the other identifications, that is the copper test or concentrated H2SO4 test. Here to the water extract or to the sodium extract, we have to add the copper chips or copper wires, and we have to add 2 or 3 drops of H2SO4 and we have to heat. Due to that we get a reddish brown color gas. Here that reddish brown color gas is nothing but nitrogen dioxide. Here nitrate ions are reduced. Nitrate ions are reduced to the nitrogen dioxide. Here we know very well that metals are good reducing agents. So here copper reduces nitrate ion to the nitrogen dioxide, and the nitrogen dioxide is very much looks like bromine also has the pungent smell and also has the reddish brown color gas, but here on heating with the copper, bromide does not change into the bromine because copper is a reducing agent but not a oxidizing agent. Okay, sorry, okay, right. So, but anyhow, copper here is not able to reduce the bromide ion to the bromine gas. So that's why here, uh, okay, due to the addition of copper, bromides are not converted to the bromine. Now we go for the brown ring test. In the brown ring test, what we have to do means we have to take the water extract and we have to add 2 or 3 drops of freshly prepared ferrous sulfate to that one, and after that we have to add the concentrated H2SO4 through the walls of the test tube. And here, if nitrate ion is present in the water extract or sodium extract, then we get a brown colored ring at the junction where two liquids meet. Two liquids means here concentrated H2SO4 and the water extract or sodium extract. Sulfuric acid is a heavy liquid, so it goes to the bottom of the test tube, and in between sulfuric acid layer and what is that water extract layer, we get a brown ring. Next, confirmation of the sulfate ions. Here, for the confirmation, there is no identification test. Directly, we have to move on to the confirmation test. For the confirmation of the sulfate ions, we have to add the barium chloride solution to the water extract or sodium extract. Here, if sulfate ions are present, then we may get a white color precipitate. That white color precipitate is nothing but barium sulfate, and this barium sulfate does not dissolve in the ammonia solution. Next, identification of the borate ions. Here, all borates swell when they are heated in the dye test tube or in the charcoal cavity test. Borates do not liberate any gas when treated with dilute or concentrated H2SO4. So, individual group ions do not react with the dilute or concentrated H2SO4. So, that's why they are kept in the separate group. Next, we go for the confirmation of the borate ions. Here, what we have to do is very simple. We have to take the water extract or sodium extract, and we have to add the H2SO4, and then we have to add the ethyl alcohol, and we have to heat. So, first of all, what happens? Borates are converted into the boric acid with H2SO4. Borates are converted into the boric acid. Then, after this, boric acid reacts with the ethyl alcohol, and we get the ethyl borate. This ethyl borate burns with green flame. That we have to remember. So, this is the confirmation test for the borate ions. Next, identification of the phosphate ions. Phosphate ions do not liberate any gas with dilute or concentrated sulfuric acid, as we have learnt in case of the borate ions. So, phosphates form a blue mass in cobalt nitrate charcoal cavity test. But generally, we directly go for the confirmation test for the phosphate ions. So, phosphate ions are confirmed by the ammonium molybdate test. In ammonium molybdate test, what we do means to the water extract or to the sodium extract, we add the ammonium molybdate. This one is known as the molybdate. Look here, CO3 minus is known as the carbonate. MoO4 minus 2 is known as the molybdate. Carbonate, molybdate. So it is ammonium molybdate. So here we add the ammonium molybdate. So as a result, what happens? We get the ammonium phosphate and sodium molybdate. The sodium molybdate again reacts with nitric acid, and we get the molybdic acid. Molybdic acid can be represented as the molybdenum trioxide and water. H2MoO4 can be written as the MoO3 plus H2O. So molybdenum trioxide and water. So this ammonium phosphate formed in the first step reacts with the molybdenum trioxide and water and forms a white color precipitate, we can name it as the ammonium phosphomolybdate. Ammonium phosphomolybdate. So the name of this white color precipitate is ammonium phosphomolybdate. Ammonium phosphomolybdate. Next we have the one more test, that is the magnesium mixture test. So here to the water extract or sodium extract we add the magnesium chloride and ammonium hydroxide. Here also we get a white color precipitate, that is the magnesium ammonium phosphate. Magnesium ammonium phosphate. Thank you for watching. Thank you.